Hello, welcome to this special interview for the Awaaz India TV. In the judicial system of India, in the recent times, many people are questioning that why this judicial system is being acting like this and that. And if why this question are arising, then what should be the reforms and what should be the solutions so that this question should not arise. And many people talks about that their community's representation is not there. So why these all questions are arising? On this topic only, we are going to start this discussion with our today's guest, Dhiman Vijaymankar. Welcome to our show, sir. He is the National President of Ambedkarite Party of India. Dr. Ambedkar said, I quote him, "However good a constitution may be, if those who are implementing it are not good, it will prove to be bad. However bad a constitution may be, if those implementing it are good, it will prove to be good." This phrase can correlate with judicial system too. Can you tell us, sir?
Yeah, partially we can say that, people should be good while, conducting the affairs under the Constitution. But I would like to, state one, opinion of my mind,
Yes.
differing from what Dr. Ambedkar has said. And I would paraphrase it like that however bad the people may be who are called upon to work upon the Constitution, however bad the people may be who are called upon to work upon the Constitution would be proven a good lot if it is having good enough principles and provisions. Therefore, constitutional morality may be desirable. But what is essentially required is constitutional legality. That is my understanding of constitution and rule of law. If I look to the constitutions of European countries, to the modern constitutions of South Africa, Uganda, Nigeria, Rwanda, or the Latin American constitutions, or the constitutions of Asia, which have undergone major amendments after the incorporation of human rights, International Bill of Human Rights in 1966. Then we have seen that how the countries and the people have solved the deficiencies of the governing model. Today we are into an era of three things. It is said democracy, rule of law, and human rights. It is said constitution, human rights, democracy, rule of law, or simply democracy, human rights, rule of law. So if we can integrate these three provisions in the constitution, that constitution itself becomes very effective. Okay. So it denies the bad people from conducting the affairs, constitutional affairs.
So, sir, can accusers also can take advantage of the judicial system, or else can judiciary system can become biased towards any religion, caste, or else any political party, etc. So can it? Is there any possibility of it?
See, two research scholars of the world who have been researching on the judiciary, Krapka and Ginsburg. Okay. See, they have done a lot of research on various aspects of the judiciary. They have said that ideology and interest, that what sort of thought process of the judges is there, what ideology do they subscribe, and what are the interests that plays a role in the judiciary. So it's not just to assume that judiciary is always neutral and fair or impartial. It can be affected by its ideology and interests.
So in addition to this, I want to ask you, sir, that in recent times, what we see in India, what people are raising the questions that is there any failure in the government institutions working style in recent times? Is it there?
Yeah, it is there. In many aspects, okay. It's there.
So what can be the possibilities of political pressure on this judicial system, or else any government institution? Is there any possibility?
Yeah, because if you see the appointment process and the elevation process and the removal process, and the post-employment retirement, that after the retirement of 65 years, we are seeing that the judges of the Supreme Court of India are being, appointed to various tribunals. Now we've seen that, the ex-Chief Justice of India, Mr. Gogoi, has also been nominated to the Rajya Sabha, to the Council of States. So all these four processes, that is the selection, that is appointments, elevation, that is the promotion, and the removal, that is impeachment, and the post-retirement benefits. If they are, you see, being conducted by the executive, then we can say that there can be political pressure. Point number one. Okay. Second, if the judges are subscribing to any particular ideology, as Grupa and Günzburg have found in their researches, then they can also be biased by those ideology and interests.
So, how will you elaborate this Babri verdict which happened in recent times? How will you elaborate?
See, by respecting the Supreme Court of India, but it's not necessary to respect the Babri, you see, judgment. Because the Supreme Court has arrived at a very, you see, very baseless, you see, premise that faith can also be a basis for, you see, giving a judgment. While acknowledging that there was no, you see, temple there, which was demolished and a mosque was constructed, while acknowledging that the mosque was demolished in 1992, then the Supreme Court of India, in the name of faith and the ideal worship, gave this judgment. So I feel we respect the, you see, powers of the Supreme Court, but we need not respect the judgment of the Supreme Court of India in the Babri verdict.
Sir, I want to ask you in a second question relating to this only, that rape cases in India, it is very dirty of its kind, but what we see in India, that when the rape cases differ in their caste, when the girl differ in their caste and when the accused are of different caste, the response from what public gives for these kind of cases are different. Why this is happening in India?
Because Indian society as such, you see, it is inclined by the mentality of caste and religion and the associated culture. And that, you see, influences their behaviors. And you see, still, you see, when we see these three things, that is what we say, that democracy, human rights, and rule of law. So this has not permeated the whole Indian society. So there are two orders, parallel orders in India. One is the order of the constitution, another is the order of the caste system. Okay. So they are both interplaying, and the caste system do affect the mentality of the people.
So do you think that there is a need of any judicial reform in this recent situation, what we are seeing in recent times in India and all over the world, which we are seeing? So would you like to say about this?
Yeah, certainly there is a need of judicial reforms in India. I would cite 4 or 5 international agreements. One is the Beijing Principles for Law Asia region. Yes. Another Bangalore Principles of Judicial Conduct. Third is the Venice Commission of Democracy. Yes. The fourth is the Latimer Principles of the Commonwealth countries. If you study all these 4 things, and if you study the common law tradition and the civil law tradition, there are, 2 traditions or systems in the world. One is the common law, tradition, that is the former Commonwealth countries, which were, the British colonies that we have adopted, the Westminster model, as we say. Second is the civil law, model, which is being adopted by Germany, France, and US, and all other countries, African countries, and so. So if we consider these 2 models, basically 2 models of law actually, and there is also a third model that is called the Communist model, Communist Party model of China. Yes. But we'll discuss these 2 models basically. You see, we are required to have, some 6, 7 major judicial reforms in India. If you want, I can list them, yes, or gradually we can discuss. But I feel 6 to 7 reforms are required in India.
So, in brief, what can be those reforms? You
see, first thing is that we should define judiciary as state in the Indian Constitution. That which it is not. If you see the Article 12 of Indian Constitution, yes, the definition of the state, so judiciary is not state in India. Yes. Only the parliament and the legislatures and the executive is the state, not the judiciary. So first of all, judiciary, we have to define judiciary as state in India. Yes. Second, we have to bring representation or reservation in the offices, because the judge, it's not a post, it's an office. And we don't have reservation in the office. If you read our constitution, yes, the reservation is only in appointment and post, 16.4, if I can quote 16.4. So we should bring representation in the offices, in the judicial offices. And it should also incorporate diversity, the gender diversity and all those things. These are 2 important points. Third, if you see 120 countries of the world, they are having judicial councils. Whereas we are in India are making appointments to the collegium system. So the collegium system, as settled by the second judge's cases of 1993, it's a system that's called a professional promotional model. You see, you are required to be an advocate, a practicing advocate in a high court for 10 years.
Yes.
If you read, you see Article 124, 3, A, B, C, and Article 217, 2, B and C, A and B. Then you'll find that you see we have adopted a professional promotional model. Whereas in the civil law tradition, there is a civil services model as it is there in Germany and US and all those things.
Yes.
Though we are having a provision of All India Judicial Services in Article 312(3), but it is not being executed yet. So we are still following the professional model. So we should adopt the judicial councils or commissions. Through those councils and commissions, because if you see the impeachment process that we have adopted
Yes.
in our constitution, so it is said that impeachment is an accident of constitutional democracies. If you study Latimer Principles of Commonwealth countries, it says that impeachment is an accident of constitutional democracy. So this is not a provision, because you see till date there is not a single judge removed in India. Only one judge was removed in UK by the impeachment process.
Okay.
So we should adopt the judicial commissions for the appointment, for the promotions, and for the removals, and also for dealing for the post-retirement benefits. Three major areas, then another small areas are there. We can continue discussing point by point later
So,
on.
since you are having this much of data, are you planning to table this bill to the Parliament?
I have already decided now to, prepare a bill on judicial reforms, comprehensive judicial reforms in India.
Okay.
I would be working it by going with the preoccupations of my party, management,
Yes.
because APIs, there are in 20 states of India,
Yes.
and I have to move a lot in the country and conduct, frequent elections also.
Yes.
But I would be planning to, prepare this bill if any member parliament is ready to introduce it as a private member's bill, because the government is not going to bring it.
So you have talked about three major points, but what would be the other points?
The other major points are, we are required to, bifurcate the Supreme Court of India.
Yes.
And to create a constitutional court that would deal with only the constitutional matters and the matters of human rights.
Okay.
Other would be an appellate court which would be dealing with the civil and the criminal matters.
Yes.
So the two bifurcations should be there of the Supreme Court of India. Then there should be, if you see Article 130 in the Indian Constitution, it already speaks about different seats to be constituted of the Supreme Court of India.
Okay.
But yet we have seen that there is no seat apart from the Delhi major Supreme Court. And now if a person coming from Kerala, it takes almost all 2 days from Kerala to come to Delhi. And if he's coming for, the violation of his own, fundamental rights,
Yes.
Particularly if you travel in Kerala Express in the summer season, you'll find that without taking a bath, they have to be there in the train, go
Yes.
to the Supreme Court, bear their own money, take all the pains, give a good fees to a good advocate there in Delhi,
Yes.
and then get their own fundamental rights. Okay.
Okay.
So
Yes,
this
sir.
is a great inconvenience. So there should be 6 to 8 seats of the Supreme Court of India. One in Bangalore, or Chennai, or Thiruvananthapuram. But Bangalore would suit for the South Indian states. One should be there in Eastern India. Apart from Calcutta, it should be there somewhere in Guwahati. Then Calcutta or Guwahati. Third should be there in the Kashmir. So North, East, and South India. West, it should be there somewhere in Ahmedabad. And in Central India, it should be there in Nagpur. So if we are having 5 or 6 seats of the Supreme Court of India, constituting of 2 judges, so the elementary cases of the fundamental rights, they can be heard here themselves. Point number 1. Second is that there are no rights of litigants. Suppose if I file a case in the Supreme Court, and if it is delayed for 4 years, 5 years, my fundamental rights are being violated for these 4 or 5 years. I don't have any right to bind the Supreme Court within the time limits and all those things. And suppose if I get a decision, but with the monetary losses and the social losses that have incurred, so there is now right as such whereby I can claim that I should be compensated for these losses before the Supreme Court. It's a discretion of the court to grant such things, but there is no right. So there should be the rights of the litigants. Then we have seen that in the Prashant Bhushan case, the contempt of court, under Article 129, So the contempt of the power of contempt of the Supreme Court It should not be about the power of, you see, human rights and fundamental rights of speech and expression and thought and, you see, opinion. So such provision should also be, you see, brought in the judiciary. So these are the 4-5 major areas, you see, whereby, you see, we should reform the overall system.
So how you think that this can be practical in India? Because what we see in our society is that many people are not aware of these kind of things, and when this kind of reforms, when it is done in our society, so it takes years to understand by the people that what have been done. So how much do you see it practically?
Practically, if we can, you see, bring a major constitutional amendments by the, you see, judicial bill or the major judicial reforms that why, you see, I am proposing,
Yes.
then I feel the Indian system of rule of law and democracy will become much more effective and much more fair and representative and deliberative.
Thank you, sir, for coming to our interview. So this was Dhiman Vijaymankar talking to us on the judicial reforms and why the judiciary is being questioned in recent times. We will be back with the new interesting topic. Till then, stay tuned.